From the forests of Europe, the Slavic tribes settled the rivers, the first heartbeat of a nation. They lived by the hunt and the river, bound to earth and sky by faith and fear.
From the north came the Varangians, traders, warriors, and kings in waiting.
In 862, Rurik united the tribes. The first ruler of the Rus was born.
Novgorod became the cradle of a nation, where trade met faith and steel. The Rus expanded Jan, following rivers toward destiny.
The Rus found wealth in trade and faith in the Empire of Byzantium. By the 9th century, Kiev rose as the heart of the Rus, a city built on rivers and dreams.
United under faith and ambition, the princes of Rus forged a single realm. After Yaroslav's death, Kievan Rus broke apart. Bam! A kingdom divided by ambition and blood. As silence replaced glory, faith became the only voice that kept Rus alive. In fire and thunder and gale, the Mongol storm devoured the Rus lands. For 2 centuries, the Mongol yoke ruled Rus. Tribute bought life, but not freedom. In the darkest winters, faith became rebellion, the soul of Rus refusing to die. Novgorod, far from Mongol chains, thrived as the northern republic of freedom and trade. Amid forests and frost, a tiny town named Moscow was born. Quiet, humble, and destined for greatness. With cunning and patience, Moscow's princes earned power, not by war, but by wisdom. Whispers of freedom spread across the land. A new power was awakening in Moscow's heart. With faith as his shield, Moscow's prince turned religion into power, uniting hearts before armies.
Ivan Kalita bought peace with silver, not swords, Danda, making Moscow rich while others bled.
Brick by brick, the Kremlin rose, Agnian, a fortress of faith and ambition. A new voice rose, calling the princes of Rus to unite against their eastern masters. For the first time in 2 centuries, the Mongol Yol trembled, and Moscow stood victorious. Dmitry Donskoy, the man who proved that faith could defeat fear.
Freedom was not yet won, it was a dream, paid for with ashes and tears.
Ivan the Great saw what others feared, a single Russia, united under Moscow's crown. Without a single battle, the Mongol yoke ended, and Russia rose from its centuries of shadow. In 1547, Ivan IV was crowned the first Tsar of all Russia, Volod, a ruler of absolute power. Ivan strengthened Moscow, reorganized armies, and modernized government Samyth, laying the foundation of an empire.
Ivan conquered Kazan, opening the east for Russia's expansion.
A symbol of victory and faith balm, St. Basil's Cathedral immortalized Ivan's reign. Paranoia and terror ruled Siris. The Oprichnina turned Russia into a land of fear. In a tragic rage, Ivan struck down his own heir, plunging Russia into uncertainty. Ivan's death sparked the time of troubles. Famine, impostors, and foreign invasions shattered the land. Moscow fell under foreign control. Correct, a nation's heart occupied by outsiders. Yet the people rose, reclaiming Moscow and igniting hope for a unified Russia. The Romanovs began their 300-year rule, restoring order, faith, and Russia's destiny. In 1672, a child was born who would drag Russia into the modern age, Peter the Great.
Bloodshed hardened his resolve. Peter would rule as a warrior Tsar.
Peter traveled the West in disguise, learning, spying, dreaming of a transformed Russia.
Peter built a city from nothing, St. Petersburg, a window to the West.
From frozen rivers, Peter forged a fleet, Russia's first window to the world. Every corner of the empire changed. Education, army, and industry brought Russia into a new age.
Peter the Great left behind an empire, powerful, modern, and forever transformed. In 1762, Catherine ascended the throne, a ruler whose ambition knew no bounds. The conquest of Crimea expanded Russia's reach, Attila, securing its southern gateway.
Her court blended power with intellect, Arsile. Russia embraced European sophistication. Catherine's armies stretched the empire far, gaining land and influence in the south. Alexander I inherited the throne, a new generation ready to defend and expand Russia. Napoleon's armies stormed into Russia, confident, yet unaware of the winter's wrath. The harsh winter became Russia's ally, grinding the invaders into retreat.
Moscow burned, but the spirit of Russia remained unbroken, a nation rising from ashes.
In 1825, Nicholas I became Tsar, a ruler determined to preserve autocracy and order.
Early in his reign, Nicholas faced rebellion Taft, the Decembrists' hope crushed beneath royal power. Reforms and surveillance went hand in hand. The Tsar's control extended to every corner of the empire. Russia's reach extended south, conquering the Caucasus with fire and diplomacy.
Even under autocracy, industry began to awaken, railroads and factories hinting at the future.
The empire's navy grew stronger, preparing for conflicts to come.
Tensions with the Ottoman Empire and European powers escalated, the stage set for war.
The Crimean War raged, Russia defending its southern ports against a coalition of Europe.
The Russian winter tested both army and morale, a cold and brutal ally.
Defeat humbled the empire, yet the spirit of Russia endured, preparing for a new era of reform.
In 1855, Alexander II ascended the throne, a ruler facing a crumbling empire and the need for change.
The empire was humbled by defeat, a lesson in modernization and the cost of stagnation.
Alexander embarked on reforms, modernizing law, army, and infrastructure.
In 1861, millions of serfs were freed, a monumental step towards social transformation.
Railroads connected the vast empire, Galanite, speeding trade, travel, and communication.
The army was modernized, a force ready to defend an empire against new threats.
Courts became fairer. Justice slowly spread to all corners of the empire.
Education grew, spreading knowledge and hope for the next generation.
Industry and infrastructure transformed Russia, preparing the empire for modern challenges.
Alexander II left behind a Russia changed forever, freer, stronger, yet still facing the storms ahead.
After Alexander II's assassination, Alexander III became Tsar, determined to strengthen autocracy.
Russia's industry grew rapidly. Railroads, factories, and new technology reshaping the empire. Cities expanded, yet wealth and comfort were limited to the few.
For peasants, life remained harsh. Reform had reached some, but many struggled to survive.
Social unrest grew. Whispers of revolution stirred among factories and cities. The seeds of revolution were planted. Radical thinkers plotted the empire's future. Conflict with the Ottoman Empire and Europe shaped foreign policy, keeping Russia alert and armed.
Discontent boiled over. Strikes and protests erupted across industrial centers.
Railroads connected the empire, expanding trade, movement, and the reach of ideas.
Entered a new century, industrialized, restless, and bracing for the storms of revolution.
In 1894, Nicholas II became Tsar Futyin, the last emperor.
Industrial growth brought wealth time, but also inequality and growing discontent.
On Bloody Sunday, unarmed workers were shot, police igniting a wave of anger and protest across Russia.
Workers and soldiers rebelled, demanding change from an unyielding Tsar. In response, Nicholas II established the Duma, a partial concession to the people.
Defeat in the Russo-Japanese War exposed weakness, fueling unrest across the empire.
Revolutionary groups gained strength, plotting for a future beyond autocracy. The empire prepared for conflict, unaware that a world war loomed on the horizon. Cities grew restless. Every street whispered the call for revolution.
By 1914, Russia stood on the edge, industrialized, strained, and ready for the catastrophe of World War I.
In 1914, Russia entered World War I. Vast armies mobilized across the frozen empire.
On the Eastern Front, Russian forces faced brutal battles. Winton and war combined into misery. Back home, citizens struggled. Shortages and cold made survival a daily fight.
Early defeats shattered morale. The empire's strength strained to breaking.
In February 1917, the people rose, demanding bread, peace, and an end to autocracy.
The last Tsar abdicated, ending centuries of Romanov rule in the midst of chaos. A provisional government took control, fragile, struggling to meet the demands of a starving nation. Soviets rose, councils of workers and soldiers seeking a new order for Russia.
In October 1917, the Bolsheviks seized power, changing Russia forever.
Russia plunged into civil war. Red and white armies fought for control of the shattered empire.
Bloody battles ravaged the land. Every city and village felt the chaos of war.
Lenin's policies of war communism aimed to supply the army food at great cost to the people. Lenin introduced the NEP, Cholis, allowing limited private trade to revive the economy. White Army sought to restore the old order time, but struggled against the organized Reds.
Mid hardship, the nation began rebuilding. Hope returned to the frost-bitten cities.
Lenin's death in 1924 marked the end of an era, the Soviet Union now ready to face the world under new leadership. The first five-year plan aimed to transform the USSR, industrializing at a breathtaking pace.
Agriculture was forced into collectives, Bernines, a harsh policy to feed the growing cities and factories.
Urban centers expanded rapidly, the USSR's industrial heart pumping under snow and steel. Architecture and propaganda glorified the new state for Tain, symbolizing power and progress.
The first five-year plan aimed to transform the USSR, industrializing at a breathtaking pace.
Plan continued industrialization, transforming the Soviet Union into a powerhouse. The army modernized, readying the USSR for future conflicts in an increasingly tense world. Despite hardships, culture and science flourished, the USSR projecting progress to the world.
In 1941, Nazi forces invaded the Soviet Union. Russia faced its deadliest hour.
The siege of Leningrad trapped millions. Survival became a daily battle. Stalingrad became the crucible of fate, where courage and endurance held back the enemy.
Launched counteroffensives, turning the tide of war.
Winter, hunger, and relentless bombing tested every soul comrade, yet resolve never faltered.
Victory was near. The Red Army captured Berlin, ending Nazi tyranny in Europe.
The Red Army pushed back, reclaiming territory inch by inch. Soviet forces marched into Eastern Europe, bringing liberation and warning.
Цена была огромной для неотцарств. Миллионы жизней были потеряны, но дух советского народа выстоял.
Tensions with the West escalated. The Cold War began, defining global politics for decades.
The Soviet Union reached for the stars. Sputnik launched, marking a new era of space exploration.
In 1945, victory was won. Hell, the USSR emerged as a superpower.
In 1991, the USSR collapsed. Russia emerged from the shadow of Soviet power. After WW2, the Soviet Union rebuilt. Cities rose from ruins, and hope returned to the frozen streets.
Couples have forgotten. Russia faced transition, economic turmoil, and political change, reshaping the nation.
In 2025, Russia stands as a nation of history and resilience, a journey spanning over 2 millennia.